Good evening, everyone. It's August 6th, 2024. This is the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals of Sherborn. Um, can we take a roll? Do we have a roll? We have everyone here, I believe. So, and Bob, are you on the phone? I don't see you on my screen. I see Mr. Haverty, but
Present and accounted for.
did you enjoy your vacation?
I did. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Good family time.
Good. So I don't know if I don't recall, I apologize if we had a specific agenda item tonight besides the Brush Hill project, Brush Hill Homes project. I don't know if there's a specific topic that we were supposed to cover or that you wanted to cover this evening.
Are you speaking to me, Zach? Sorry.
Yes.
Actually, I sent you a couple of emails with a suggested agenda. I'm now assuming maybe you didn't receive them.
I may not have received it. I apologize. It's my day job has been
No worries.
a bit more than 100% lately.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I just want to make sure you're getting my emails. That's all.
I don't know that I saw it, but I'll double check and make sure
Sure.
I
so I can read you what the agenda that I proposed last week, and that is that we review the proposed contract and move forward with the peer review by Tetra Tech. We discuss site safety and the traffic impact or traffic assessment letter, which I forwarded to you yesterday and is posted on the town website.
Yep.
And then the third was that we would review the septic and the stormwater design and have DGT just present that for maybe 15 minutes and take any questions. Those were my three suggested agenda items.
Great. Board members, any objections to that order?
No.
Great. So I guess why don't we start? I know I connected with Gene yesterday. I thought we were on track with the Tetra Tech contract, but Bob, you want to let us know where you think we are and what you need from us?
Sure. They sent a contract over, and then I made a couple of suggested revisions, not in scope, but sort of in scope. One of the things that they had put a very large scope on was water supply, and in this particular project, unlike Farm Road or even Washington Street, if and when we come back to it, this project, the individual homes have individual wells, and as far as I know at this time, those wells will be meeting all of the local regulations. So I don't think that's a big lift for Tetra Tech. We didn't take that scope down to zero, but we reduced it.
I did see the emails, and just to clarify, relative to the last two projects that you referenced, Farm Road and Washington Street, I think we all reasonably believe that this will be much more limited in scope due to the fact that you are saying you're complying with all the local regulations. So in terms of the water supply.
Yep.
So I agree with that reduction in perceived scope.
Yeah, and I'll just remind folks that the reduction doesn't preclude any further analysis that is requested by the board. All it does is just kind of it just reduces for the time being, I will say.
It's a preliminary budget based on your anticipated scope.
Exactly, and I am now comfortable.
There have been some significant issues raised by neighbors regarding water supply. So I'm not sure it's going to be such a slam dunk, personally.
Sure. Well, we can obviously, Jonathan, discuss it as much as you all would like.
Thank you.
But in the current topic, we're talking about the proposal. I'm accepting of the proposal, and if you are, then I would ask that you tell Tetra Tech to go forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate your thoughts and perspective. John, I see that you have a perspective, and so I guess I would ask, have you looked at the proposal at this point, and if you have, any feedback you have, it would be great, and if not, maybe we reserve this for the next meeting after you've had an opportunity to look at the proposal.
No, I have read the Tetra Tech proposal, and I would move that we accept it and ask Tetra Tech to proceed so this process can move along.
Okay. Great. I see there's a hand up, Kevin. I don't know if Jeannie, if you're managing this, but if we could recognize Kevin, unless there's any other board members that want to speak first.
Well, thank you. I have a question, point of order question. I read the agenda. The agenda was very general. And now I see Bob setting the agenda. We had no prior notice of what topics would be covered by this meeting. I'm a rookie, but could someone on the zoning board explain to me the process here, the due process?
Yeah, so this is an open hearing. There's a lot of topics that the developer will present information, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions at the end of each substantive topic. Generally, if you would like to, share an opinion, that's fine. I think it's best, for the sake of limited time in these meetings, to put your detailed opinion sort of in writing, either before or after the meeting. So, as long as it's on the record, that's what helps us on the board consider those facts easier when it comes time for deliberation. Obviously, reiterating that orally in the meeting is fine, but I think also, the agenda becomes a bit fluid based on, the expressed concerns and the needs of the project. So there's no particular, order necessarily, but if you have feedback, we like to hear it.
Well, I'll just say briefly that I can be more intelligent in responding to comments and questions if I know during the hearing, when I have all of your ears, what the topics are. I've never been involved in a public hearing where the agenda is generic and the proponent of the project lists the items for discussion and the board says, okay, let's do that. We can prepare better for these hearings if we know in advance specifically what the zoning board is going to cover, instead of doing after the fact submissions to the record.
Well, if you attended the last meeting, you would have heard that we also did address traffic as the first substantive issue, which is actually the first substantive issue we are going to address. So I would encourage you to attend all the meetings, and we will do better at trying to post the detail of each particular subtopic. At the moment, though, I think the requirement is only that we post the project specifically, but I will, I'm going to let our former chair, whose hand is raised, maybe chime in here because he seems to want to contribute.
Well, I just wanted to say, Mr. Shays, that is not how zoning works. Okay, the zoning hearings are subject matter notice. And the subject matter is the Brush Hill project. So anything is fair game. As a matter of procedure and trying to be helpful, sometimes we'll put a particular agenda up, and sometimes at the end of the next prior meeting, we'll say, next time we'll talk about A, B, or C, for just the reasons you suggest. But it is not a process where you should have any expectation at all that there will be a rigid, today we talk about X, Y, and Z only, and in that order. That is not how it works.
Well, thank you for the current board chair for agreeing to exceed that minimum standard.
I haven't agreed.
I think all of us are exceeding that minimum standard.
Yeah, I think we will try to have more transparency to the extent that we can, but obviously things happen very fluidly. Experts have availability at the last minute or unavailability at the last minute, as well as our board. So we will do our best. We absolutely meet the statutory minimum requirements of notice. I would encourage you to participate in all of these meetings because there's a lot that happens. There's a lot that's said. And, documentation is what is best because, as you can tell, if you've participated or seen, you can watch previous deliberations. A lot happens with respect to the review of the records. We don't have really the luxury of time to rewatch all of these hearings. So again, putting it in writing in a document, getting someone with a credential to validate your opinion, obviously is very helpful to us versus sort of, repeated comments on the topic. And that's not to say that that's what you're going to do. This is general guidance, for anyone listening.
Thank you.
I see Andrew, and Andrew, if we could recognize Andrew.
Thank you, Zach. Maybe it's my recollection, but I recall that at the end of the last meeting, it was specified that the agenda for this meeting would concern groundwater, drinking water, and septic. I don't recall any mention of the traffic impact analysis. I saw late last night that Bob had submitted a traffic assessment. I haven't had a chance, nor have all the other neighbors who are present today, I assume, on this call, have had a chance to review that carefully. Do I understand, though, Zach, that if there's no real set agenda and it's fluid, then issues that come up concerning an agenda, quote, agenda item tonight can be discussed at any point in the future?
Correct. Yeah. So what happens usually the cadence here is the applicant, in this case Bob, will present a topic from his perspective, and often we will blow past public comment on some level in that first meeting and give everyone an opportunity to digest materials, what was said, and then we will revisit it later. Obviously, we sort of do take comments contemporaneously important, but I think there's a lot of times we present the material, there's documentation you can all review, and then we can revisit the topic at another time. So that I think that works best, so that we're not sort of all just reacting, that we're being more thoughtful and considered in how we are approaching each topic. And I think, again, not to waste everyone's time with repetition, I think that works best. So let's let Bob, let's get through some of the preliminary stuff here. Everyone's going to have an opportunity to be heard. I think there's a good and bad way to let everyone be heard in terms of process and order. So I think again, and just to address your concern, at the last meeting, I prompted the traffic conversation. Bob didn't think he was going to have an expert, and then there has been a ton of public comment about traffic, and so I think Bob has taken the, I would say, proper initiative and addressed it. So let's sort of continue. There's a motion for Mr. Fitch on the table, unless there's any other questions, and I'd like to have a second to Mr. Fitch's motion to approve the Tetra Tech contract.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded, approved. Jeannie, I don't know if you can handle that next step.
It's already in the process, so I think we're all good. Bob has the signed version of it, so I think we're good to go.
Wonderful.
Do we need just a roll call vote, just for the record, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Thank you, Todd. Mr. Fitch.
Fitch, aye.
Mr. Labby.
Labby, aye.
Mr. Novak.
Novak, aye.
Ms. McBride, aye. So unanimous. It approves. Thank you, Todd, for that point of good procedural hygiene. So look at that, the non-lawyer keeping us all straight.
Good.
Wonderful. So, all right. So next on the topic, I think we'll give Bob an opportunity to present his traffic safety study, and then we'll open it up for just a few minutes of public comment in response to that. I will close it off after just a few minutes. That does not mean that that's the last opportunity to be heard, but I think we just want to get the general consensus of where people are, not scientific one, and then we will move on to the next one, the next substantive topic. So we can all ingest this information and come back with very considered thoughts at the next meeting. So with that, if we could turn it over to Bob and Bob's team to discuss site safety.
Yeah, so Zach, I did not bring the traffic folks tonight for just the reason that Andrew kind of alluded to, because I agree with him. I think people need to be able to absorb the report that's been done and then come back with well-considered thoughts and questions. So I didn't bring them tonight. So I think we can just very briefly go over the summary, and if people have any initial non-expert questions of me, I'm happy to address them. Then what I would ask, what I think, and I think this is, better for the board and it's better for me, is if people can put their questions in writing. That's not to say that we can't have a back and forth on those questions, but if, oftentimes people will ask things in a meeting and you don't have the answer at your fingertips because you don't know what the question is in advance. So I would ask that folks, kind of much the same way I received a bunch of letters this afternoon, that prior to the next meeting, and I will try to schedule, I can't guarantee based on scheduling that Jeff will be available, but I'm assuming he will, and we can come and address those at that time. So why don't I just very quickly, and I'm loath to generally read things, but this is literally 2 paragraphs, and I think it kind of sets the page. So the traffic, Fantasy and Associates has prepared a transportation impact assessment in support of the proposed Brush Hill Homes residential development to be located at 34 Brush Hill. This assessment has provided trip generation calculations for the project and includes a review of the anticipated travel patterns of the residents of the project and a qualitative assessment of potential impact of the project on the transportation infrastructure. Based on this assessment, they have concluded the following with respect to the project. 1, using trip generation statistics published by the ITE, the project is predicted to generate approximately 76 vehicle trips on an average weekday. That's two-way, 24-hour volume, with 6 vehicles expected during the weekday morning peak hour and 8 vehicle trips expected during the weekday evening peak hour. 2, the additional traffic that may be associated with the project, fewer than 1 additional vehicle every 6 minutes during the weekday peak hours, will not result in a significant impact, i.e. increase, in motorist delays or vehicle queuing over existing conditions. And 3, based on a review of motor vehicle crash data available from Mass DOT, no inherent safety deficiencies were identified with regard to current conditions along Brush Hill Road. In consideration of the above, they have concluded that the project can be accommodated within the confines of the existing transportation infrastructure in a safe and efficient manner with the implementation of the recommendations that follow. And the recommendations are pretty straightforward. Stop sign control at Brush Hill, obviously. No on-street parking within the site. In other words, all of the driveways are non-parking. We will have some visitor spots, as well as all the homes will have 2 what I'll call apron spots in front of their garage. All signs and pavement markings are installed to conform with the applicable standards. Existing trees that get in the way of sight lines will be cleared, and then of course snow accumulations will be dealt with appropriately for sight lines. It's you'll see it when you read this. It's a lot more detail than I'm actually reading. But I guess the one thing I would just comment beyond that, just to remind people, so we've got 8 homes here. These homes are, 15 to 1,800 square feet. And at Abbey Road, I built 18 homes, and they were all kind of around 2,000 square feet. So actually bigger homes. And the actual experience at Abbey Road is that there is just about 1.5 residents per home at Abbey Road, okay? And these homes are actually smaller than Abbey Road homes, and they'll be less expensive than Abbey Road homes. So I think it's fair to expect that 1.5 person per home is probably not going to be materially exceeded. In some of the letters that came in today, people talked about, 16 cars. I can't imagine there being 16 cars coming and going from this site. That's just not a scenario that I can see happening.
So 16, Bob?
8 in the letters that I received today from residents, they referred to 16 cars. And I'm just reminding people at 1.5 residents per home, we're very unlikely to have 16 cars.
And why are we assuming there's 1.5 residents
All I'm doing, Zach, the report is traffic science. What I am presenting to you is my own life experience, which is bigger homes at Abbey Road have 1.5 people in them. Okay, that's the experience.
That's your average from that development. It's what you're saying. The real
in bigger homes, and that's not science. That's just
okay.
an observation on my part.
Yeah, I just want, if you could, I don't know if you're done with your
Yes, I'm all set.
presentation at this point. I want to open it up to the board first, and see what their thoughts and feelings are. I know Rick always wanted to solicit our feelings. As
Sure.
lawyers, it's always an interesting ask. So we'll see how that goes. But I said, so John, I see you wanted to, if you had a comment, you want to start.
Yes, my question, Bob, I didn't read anything in the traffic study of an on-site inspection of Brush Hill Road. It wasn't clear to me that your traffic engineers had actually walked Brush Hill Road. And there were concerns expressed by neighbors about the narrowness of the road and the difficulty that 2 cars have at some points passing each other. So I would like your expert to be prepared to discuss the on-the-ground conditions observed by your experts.
Sure, absolutely. We can do that. Yes.
Thank you.
The one thing I would say, Jonathan, and kind of about your Brush Hill Road is a narrow road. It's one of the narrower roads in town. That's a fact, and I'm not disputing that. People saying that Brush Hill is unsafe, then if they believe that to be true, I think they should talk to the select board and to the CM&D folks, because that's a public safety issue for the folks who currently live on Brush Hill Road, and I would encourage them to address that with their government. Adding 8 new homes is not going to change that situation.
Well, I guess that's something we'll have to consider, Bob.
Absolutely.
And I think that the residents are addressing the public safety issue right now in the context of your application.
But I've never seen them well, I
think just to avoid Bob. So, hey, so I guess just a little point of order here. If we could just wait to be recognized by, I guess, the perceived authority that I have as the chair, that would be great to continue decorum and order, and we don't have a back and forth. So if you could just wait, Bob, to respond, and John, if you could just sort of ask the question and then let Bob, respond and sort of be done.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Zach. Well, I'm done.
Okay. Rick, can we hear what your thoughts are or feeling?
Yes, thank you for deeming me worthy of speaking, exalted chair. And I very much appreciate your deep and personal concern for my feelings and well-being. Turning serious for a moment, though, the traffic issue, Kevin Shays and others who've not been in the project, this is a really good microcosm of how the process does work. If you're surprised by the track report, didn't have a chance to read it yet, didn't have a chance to react to it, that's fine, because our agenda is not sort of siloed into we're going to talk about traffic tonight and then it's shut off. Take your time, read it, be careful. I think Bob even agrees with me that, be thoughtful, submit comments in writing or verbally, whatever works. It's also the classic area where, as Chair McBride said, if you have an outside expert to back you up, that's helpful. Mr. Dirk from Vanass is not the only traffic engineer in the world. Traffic engineers, in my 40 years of experience in real estate business, don't always agree. You'll need to decide what you wish to do. I think this is just a live issue, and Bob has done a good job of putting his position forth. And, it is what it is. I think most real estate people would not compare traffic counts from age restricted with not age restricted, but that is just my experience.
Rick. Todd, any thoughts?
No, I would just agree with Rick's last comment. Not that I disagree with his previous comments, but yeah, I would just like to highlight that it's important that I think it's helpful to have those anecdotal pieces of information, but that does not always mean that we're doing apples to apples comparison, and it may not always be applicable or appropriate. So again, part of the conversation, part of the discussion, and I don't have anything further to add at this time.
Just one question. You said Abbey Road was your reference point, right? Abbey Road was the reference point you were making for your 1.5.
That is
And
correct.
that's like right across the street from me, right in the center of town, correct?
I think that's correct.
Sort of across the street.
I don't know where you live, Zach,
it's
but
a figure of perception, but yes, it's close. It's in the center of town, correct?
Yeah, and what I would just say to Rick's comment is fair enough about the 55 and over, but I would also say that these houses are actually smaller than
I would comment they're farther away and they're not walkable to anything. So that would be my perspective, but I think others may have a different perspective. So I think I see one other hand up. Andrew, if we're gonna just take a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to follow up on what Jonathan said concerning the study that was posted yesterday, and that it appears that I read it, Bob, very briefly, but it appeared to me that it was a paper exercise and not based on observation or traffic counting or anything like that. But you mentioned it was trip generation calculations. And I was wondering if you could enlighten me as to what actually a trip generation calculation is and what that is based on.
Thank you, Andrew. And actually, that's a good point. I had a similar question about the methodology. I noticed the footnotes, and I just didn't see, I guess, enough detail about assumed car count to the development, which I think, 2 garage spots, thinking there's 16 cars is not unreasonable. I think that, so we don't have to discuss it now if you want to wait in terms of the methodology to another meeting, but I did have a similar question. If you want to answer now, just let me know how you want to proceed.
Sorry,
would you prefer to table this or respond?
Sorry, no, I was waiting I wasn't sure you were speaking.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So I guess what I would say is I think I could, Andrew, answer basic stuff, but not, I think it's better to have Jeff come and do it. So,
great. So
I can tell you that it's having, done this a few times now, that this is a very standard process. It's not, made up on the fly for this project. This is a standard process they're going through.
Well, whether I should admit this or not, I don't know if I paid enough attention to the other traffic study. So I think for this one, if you could definitely have him come in and just explain the methodology. I think this seems to be the topic of the day from public comment. So I think it would be important to let's focus a little bit on this, Bob, if you're willing.
Fair enough.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments on this issue before we do have an opportunity to revisit it again at another meeting? I don't see any hands, but that's just from my view. So if there are, Jean, let me know. Otherwise, we can move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I think, I think iPhone, but he's trying to talk and I don't know, he's not muted. But I think he wants to talk, but he can't get his sound going.
Well,
why don't we just keep? Yeah.
If iPhone is able to reach out, we can revisit. But we will be addressing this topic again at another meeting. So Bob will let us know when his expert is available, and we can schedule that. Bob, there's another topic on the meeting on today's agenda. I think it was you said septic and stormwater. So if your expert is ready or you're ready to discuss, why don't we begin that topic?
Let's see, is Bert on here? I think
I see him on there. I think I just saw him.
Yeah. So Bert Corey, DGT, which for many folks have been hanging around Metro West for a lot of years. Is the old Schofield brothers, which many of us know and have worked with, and show up on all kinds of engineering and survey plans around the town of Sherborn for probably 75 years, I think, Bert. So they know their way around the town of Sherborn, and this is Bert Corey.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I think what I'll do is I'll just cover 3 items. I'll cover the roadways, I'll cover the septic system, and then I'll cover the stormwater. To start with, though, if I can share my screen, that would be terrific because it's easier to talk from a picture. I'm not sure if people can see this screen or not.
Yeah,
Can you see that?
No.
Yes?
Not yet, Bert.
That's
No.
not-
Not yet, huh? Okay.
You should be able to share it though. There it goes.
You got it?
yeah.
I see it now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So pavement wise, no point in trying to develop an area that we can't get to without a roadway. So the proposed road is coming off of Brush Hill Road. It's a 20-foot wide paved roadway. So it's not ultra wide. It is to try to minimize the amount of impervious. It extends approximately 470 feet before it starts into the large portion of the site. And the roadway will continue onto the site. It runs around in a loop type of a fashion rather than a cul-de-sac type to provide access to the 8 individual houses that are here. And as Bob mentioned, there are driveway access points off of this roadway, as well as 5 visitor parking spaces. The grading in the area didn't present too much of a challenge to us. We're looking at about 6% in this roadway, continuing on about 6%, flattening off in through here. The steepest area is about 8%. So not too bad as far as the grades go. Overall, the entire site slopes anywhere from 8 to 17% from the south to the north in that direction. So it's down grading as I head north here. There are a couple of retaining walls that are shown on this plan. Certainly there's a 2-foot retaining wall in the center island here. What we're trying to do is create an open grass area for the residents of this development. We're also using it to place an infiltration galley underneath. But nevertheless, in order to get the grades to work out, we need to have some type of a small retaining wall there. There's another retaining wall proposed around the septic system. The height of that wall is about 4 feet. And moving on to detention basin, this is a surface detention basin. Another retaining wall is required, and then a subsurface detention basin is also going to require a retaining wall. The reason why we have these retaining walls is the soils are pretty tough. Slow permeability, slow percolation rates, relatively high groundwater table. So it requires us to lift the stormwater BMPs as well as the septic system components so that they remain out of the groundwater table and they provide the separation distance as required by the code. Let's see. So as far as the septic system itself, you can see that this is a fairly large septic system. If we found sandy soils in this area, this would be about 1/3 the size. Because the percolation rates were so slow, and in this case, they were at 47 minutes per inch. The maximum for the Title V is 60 minutes per inch. So we were right on the cusp. What it does is it makes for a very large spread out system. So, but it works in through this area. What we're proposing is to collect sewage through building sewers from each of the housing units, entering into just a typical gravity flow sewer system, directing that flow from the houses over to a septic tank, a 6,000 gallon septic tank, so that the effluent is clarified, sludge, scum held within the tank. The clarified effluent will end up going into a pump chamber where it is then pumped through a force main up to a splitter box, which will divide that flow into 2 distribution boxes. From those distribution boxes, it'll gravity flow into this septic field. What you're seeing here is the standard pipe and stone built from 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot stone trenches. The one thing about the layout of this is it's a step trench system. And so what we're trying to do is, rather than continue these at the same elevation and extending out over the grade, this wall would become very tall. So what we're trying to do is step this down, again, keeping the required distance to the estimated seasonal high groundwater. We've got testing in this general area. Was witnessed by the Board of Health and throughout the site. There were a couple of tests, percolation tests that were started, had to be abandoned due to it was a moist, saturated condition in the holes. It just so happened that in this general area here, we were able to run those percolation tests, albeit they were pretty slow tests. The septic system is, I wanted to just touch base with this one. There's requirements for distance of separation or horizontal separation distance between the soil absorption system or the leach field and the wells, whether it's the private wells that are being proposed on this site or abutting wells. The Sherborn well regulations are a little more stringent than the state regulations. Requires at least a distance of 125 feet. Could be another 25 feet added onto that if you're upgrading or downgrading, and then an additional 25 feet if your soils have a percolation rate faster than 3 minutes per inch. We don't have any of those fast draining soils. So what we showed on this plan was 150 feet, just to give an idea of where that 150 feet is. All of the proposed wells are outside of that 150 feet, as well as we're showing the abutting wells, and then just using another 150 feet. This well happens to be upgrading of that. Technically, this should be 125 feet, but nevertheless, we're just showing 150 feet. So within this area here, there's really no, we're not interfering with any of the setback issues or in non-compliance with those setback issues. This area over here is a wetland area, all downgraded. This is all town of Sherborn conservation land. There are no houses or other private wells that are in this area here. The system is designed for 18 bedrooms, so the total design flow is 1,980 gallons, just slightly below the 2,000 gallons. Does not require pressure distribution. The other issue that we were looking at was the nitrogen loading within this area, and the state regulations allow 440 gallons per day to be put into the ground for every acre. Their acre is 40,000 square feet rather than 43,560 square feet. When we do the calculations, which are shown on one of these plans, we're below the threshold limit of that nitrogen loading. So it's mindful of that too. Going on to
Go back to that
stormwater.
slide. Let me just go back to that
Sure,
front slide for a
absolutely.
second. I just
Yep,
want to clarify,
yep,
you saying
yep.
it's 24, aggregated maximum is 2450, is that what you're saying? And then
That's correct.
for regulation, and that the maximum for this project is 1980 on a 2-bedroom per unit.
That's correct. Yeah.
Assumption. Okay, thank
Excellent.
you.
Yep, good summary.
No, actually, Zach, there are 2 of the homes have 3 bedrooms and the other 6 have 2 bedrooms.
Mhm.
And so that number includes all of the bedrooms.
Yeah.
But they're not all, they're not
3
all-
bedrooms in the
Okay.
remaining, and
Correct.
the remaining 2.
Correct, yeah.
Let's see, going on to stormwater. So we've got several stormwater best management practices incorporated into this. Again, it's all based on, what we've got for the estimated seasonal high groundwater, as well as the soil texture, as well as permeability rates. I'm not showing on this slide, but this roadway that's coming in, we're collecting the roadway runoff in deep sump catch basins with, the oil debris traps, standard practice. Grabbing that influent and running it through a water quality unit to provide additional TSS removal. From there, this upper portion of the roadway will be transferred to an underground infiltration galley to provide the required recharge. At some point in time, though, and there's several design storm events, whether it's the 10, the 25, and the 100, there will be overflow from this system. That overflow is transferred via a pipe over to this surface detention basin, which provides the peak flow mitigation. So under existing conditions, there's so much flow that travels off of the site in CFS. Under proposed conditions, the intent of our stormwater design, which we're meeting, is to mitigate any additional peak flow associated with the development so that we can match or be better than the existing conditions with peak flow. The bottom portion of the roadway, as well as some of these the roof areas too, will be captured. Roadway runoff, again, treated through a stormwater treatment unit, and then transferred to the infiltration galley where, again, we're providing the required amount of recharge. Overflow from that would go into, in this particular area, we have a subsurface detention chamber. These are plastic chambers, but they are surrounded with an impermeable barrier so that the water doesn't infiltrate back into the ground. Their main point is to mitigate peak flows, but we need that type of volume in order to mitigate that peak flow. The reason why it's not a surface system like this one, we tried to implement that into this corner. It's just that the grading and the way that the existing grades fall off, in order to get that volume requirement, the grades start to spread out, and it was getting close to the property line, and it was also creating a higher berm on the bottom side. So the way that we addressed that was to put in this subsurface system. So that's why you'll see an open detention chamber, an open detention system, and a subsurface detention system. There's also a smaller infiltration galley here where we're picking up some of the roof area. So what we're doing is we're capturing about 90% of the impervious cover that's being proposed. As long as we exceed the 65%, we're meeting the Massachusetts standard. We're meeting the peak flows, and then on the recharge, we're exceeding the recharge amount required by the Massachusetts regulations. For this type of soil, where the target depth is 0.25, but we're also providing a water quality volume, so we're providing 0.5 or a half an inch. So we're well in exceedance of the required recharge volume too. So those are the three measurable items that are in the Massachusetts stormwater regulations: peak flow, recharge, and water quality volume. We're meeting all of those. We're also meeting the setback requirements for all of these BMPs. So I guess that's probably a pretty good summary, I would imagine. I'm probably talking too much, so I'd like to.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm going to start with a comment, which is I'm glad to see that this is a simple system, sort of a tried and true design, gravity fed. I think that makes a lot of sense. There's just sort of one thing that you said that gives me a little concern, and I don't know if you can address it now or you want to go back, but you sort of mentioned that there was like slope perk rates and high water tables. I understand I'm not an expert in mass stormwater, but it would seem to me that if we're keeping more water on the property, we're going to exacerbate those problems. So I'm just wondering how we're potentially dialing in the stormwater issues so that we're not, raising water tables and potentially, exacerbating the, let's call it, poor soil situation, or not ideal. soils. So that I just want to maybe throw that out there and see if you have any response to that, or if you want to sort of take other questions first. So I'll let you sort of.
No, I can respond back to your question. With regards to the recharge, it's the Massachusetts stormwater regulations is to replenish the annual recharge amount that would be lost by the impervious cover. So in this particular case, we're proposing about 48,000 or a little over an acre of impervious cover. Of that, it's the 0.25 that needs to be put back into the ground in order to replicate that loss, that annual loss. Also with water quality volume, in order to clean the water and pre-treat the water, there's a half-inch that would be required. So in providing that half-inch, we're only providing that half-inch so that we meet that requirement. Actually, we're providing a little bit more, but then we overflow from that. So we're not overdoing it with the recharge. There's going to be a lot of water that comes out of that goes into these detention chambers, the surface and this one here, similar to what you see in a lot of the subdivision plans and things like that. We need to take that water. Now we need to detain that water. So this acts as a surge tank. So depending on the storm event, if we have 100-year storm event, this water will raise in this or rise up in this detention basin. There's an outlet control structure which will allow that water to leave this detention basin at a metered rate, so that the rates that come out under the 2, 10, 25, and 100 don't exceed the existing conditions. So that's.
I'm going to open up to the board, the rest of the board members, and then I see Sean has his hand raised, so we'll go to him after the board. John, Todd, Rick, any questions, comments?
None from me.
No. Go ahead, John.
I don't have any questions or comments at this point. Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Fitch. No comments at this time.
Great, thank you. Sean?
That's a first.
I prefer usually not to make comments this early, but, and this will come up during the peer review. I'm going to make sure it does. But you mentioned current and future storm events. The one thing you didn't mention is you are making a change of use of the land, and you've made no mention of phosphorus reduction. You'll need to treat for phosphorus. You'll get some points for that infiltration system. But regardless of what you're shedding a different use of stormwater. Sorry, this is when the dogs have to start barking right when I'm talking.
How it works.
But you'll need to address that, because any phosphorus leaving that property will be considered an illicit discharge, regardless of which watershed we're in. Our MS4 permit forces that on every change of use in town.
Thank you, Sean. Kevin Shays.
Thank you. Quick question for Bert. Does your septic analysis make an assumption about the number of persons who live in this planned community?
No, it does not. Title V implies that through their design flow. So Title V design flow is 110 gallons per day. It's based on that number of bedrooms, and then they factor in that, or they assume that there's 2 people per bedroom. So 55 gallons per day per person times 2 is the 110 gallons per day per bedroom. That's how it's calculated through Title V.
Kevin, another way of saying it is it's designed for 18 bedrooms or 36 people to live on the site. That's what the design is for.
Right. So if somehow more than 12 people live here, it's designed for more than those 12 people.
It's designed for 36 by law, by Title V. It's designed for 36 residents.
Great,
Thank you. If we could just, everyone's obviously being cordial, but if we could just sort of follow the procedural hygiene of waiting to be
Sure.
recognized, that would be great. Thank you.
Jack, could I be recognized again?
Yes,
Just to
Bob,
make
thank
a
you.
further point to the presentation rather than answering any questions.
Yes, and then we'll get to
that is-
Andrew.
And Bert can confirm this for me, but so the septic, Bert said we had 47 minutes of percolation, which is correct on one of the perk tests. As people that know about this stuff know that you have to have 2 perk tests. The other perk test was approximately half of the 47 minutes. It was at 22 or 23, and Bert, I don't have it in front of me, but it was in the low 20s. And the reason I'm pointing that out is that we're required to design to the worst perk test, but the facts on the ground are one of the 2 perks was half that number. And I just think that's a relevant piece of information.
And not so fast that it would increase the well distance. Is that correct?
Well, not at all. It would have to be less than 3 minutes.
Just to clarify that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I would say is that, the soils aren't optimal. I mean, the soils at Farm Road were far, far better for septic than here. But what's interesting to me is that when you raise the system, when you have soils like your groundwater like we do, and you raise the system, you actually fill the system with perfect septic gravel. And so one might argue that because we've raised the system or proposing a raised system, that we have really, really good soil or gravel to percolate through. So anyway, thank you.
Bob. And we'll go to Andrew, and then I see Daryl has her hand raised. We'll go to her next. So Andrew, if you want to comment.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Zach. A couple questions for you, Bert. One is, if I read it correctly, the plan is predicting 2.061 acre feet for a 100-year flood. Is that right?
Hold on one second. Let me get the,
I should have put the page number on it.
no, I've got it in front of me here though. That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So under existing conditions, the 100-year storm for the volume of that is 1.8 acre feet. Under proposed conditions, there would be slightly more volume. It'd be 2.061. Yeah.
And if my reference was correct, an acre foot equals 325,850.943 gallons. Is that correct?
I'd have to do the calculation, but an acre foot is 1 foot over an acre. So 43,560 times 7.48.
Yeah. So that's probably correct.
Yeah.
So that would mean that it would, in a 100-year flood, that would equal 671,578 gallons would be discharged into the wetland.
Over a period of time. Yeah. Over that storm event. Yeah.
Over that storm event.
Yeah.
To me, you're the expert. I'm a layperson in these things. That sounds like an enormous amount of water entering that wetland.
We start with 1.82 acre feet.
Where are we after the development?
That's pre-development.
And what's post-development?
That's today, 2.061.
So it's more than what you presently have by about.
Yeah, you'd have to subtract those. Yeah, you'd have to subtract those.
Okay.
Yep.
And has there been any modeling of the impacts of that discharge on the wetland and surrounding land, and at all, any modeling done or thought given to the impact of the wetland?
No, the model actually takes into account that particular design point. So Massachusetts stormwater regulations, they require you to match peak flow for the 2 and the 10. I don't necessarily require you to match it for the 100-year storm event. If you do match it for the 100-year storm event, then essentially the small increases in volume are not really looked at. So it's really a matter of matching those peak flows, because that volume will increase. We can look at what that means to any downstream effect, where we would apply that additional volume of water out over a particular area. We have done that in the past, where we've looked at lakes, ponds, things like that were being discharged to.
Right.
In this particular case, there is a wetland. We have not walked on another person's property to see what that looks like. We know that there is a wetland over there, based on I think somebody else had flagged that at one point in time.
Right. And what would be the discharge point of this quantity of water into the wetland? Is it several discharge points, or is it one?
No, there's really two.
One.
There's really, I can show you on my screen, actually. Yeah. There's really two places where this site, I don't know if you can see the contours that are in here, but generally this part of the site flows to this corner, whereas this part, if we're running perpendicular to the contours, starts to flow down to this corner over here. So these are the two design points that were used to compare existing to proposed conditions.
Okay.
Where would you, if you could, where would you say, Brett, the ridges of like flow, like where does it break?
Yes. Right in through the center here.
To the center. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this basically, I'm seeing so the majority of the houses, and I would say not the vast majority, but the majority seem to break to the left. And how close is the wetland to the south, I guess the northwest?
Let's see. So you can see the flagging here.
Yeah.
Let me just zoom in on this thing here for you.
Is that east? Is that sort of?
This is north. Here's a north
Okay.
arrow right here.
Yeah.
So northeast corner.
Yeah.
You can see the wetland flags, and then the 100-foot buffer zone is drawn onto this.
Okay. And is there a buffer zone on the other corner, on the opposite corner?
Yes, there is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Bert, you raised one of my follow-up questions, and that is on the northeast side of the property, where it's listed as vegetated wetlands. There's an intermittent stream there, and then you have the buffer zone to the west of that, right? But you're
talking about this area here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're building in the buffer zone.
That's correct.
So
yeah.
So I'm just gonna jump in for a second. Yeah. So Andrew, I think unfortunately, whether it comes to 40Bs, the 50 to 100-foot buffer is really not as much of an issue, I would say, in a non-legal way, as it is for us residents, especially those like myself who tried to build a new house. So
exactly.
It is. I successfully did it, but it was fun, right? So it's not as much in play for the 40Bs as it is for the rest of us.
Zach, is there a buffer zone with 40Bs?
Yeah, you should defer to the state Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. That really is what's most instructive here. I think I'm gonna probably misspeak, so please take my I would say I blacked out for a couple of years when I was dealing with this, but my understanding is that there's a presumption of harm in our 50 to 100 that we have to rebut, whereas that presumption of harm does not exist to the same degree in the mass standard. So that's why there's a little bit more leeway with the 40Bs.
I see. Okay, well, and nobody has walked the intermittent stream to see where that discharges to.
No, I mean, so I'm just gonna say, in order for all this to be flagged, there was an engineer that flagged this. And so I guess I would ask Andrew if you could take some time and maybe put your questions in writing and send them to me, and we can address them sort of
Okay.
more comprehensively the next time.
Sure.
We do have a request from one of our board members
right.
to end sort of somewhat promptly this evening, which I would like to accommodate that so he continues to help with these meetings. So
I defer. Thanks, Zach.
I just want to give Daryl a chance to comment, and then I think we're gonna sort of wrap this up quickly this evening.
Oh, okay. If you wanted to end at 8, you could easily just save this for another time.
It's okay, Daryl. I know you had your hand up, so you can ask John what he needs, and I'll defer to him.
Well, I would appreciate wrapping up as soon as we can.
Okay.
Daryl, depending upon what you've got to say, if you can hold it, that would be appreciated.
Okay. That's fine.
All right. So Daryl, we'll address your comment next time if that's okay with you. Bob, is there anything that you want to add right now in terms of what you want to talk about next time, or this particular topic?
30 seconds, I think I can get through it.
Sure.
The first is I just wanted to go back to Andrew's question about walking the wetlands. The wetlands were fully delineated by an engineer, and a ANRAD was filed with the state, with Arconcom and with the state, and all of those plans are available online for Andrew to review. In other words, there's no question about where the wetland resources.
And Andrew, just from a point of procedure, you know, the applicant has an engineer go out and flag, and then our own wetlands agent has to go and confirm and can adjust those flags. So this is a post verification from the agent in town.
Yep, no, that is correct, absolutely. And then my second point, and this is really for a look forward, as you suggested, Zach, is that we've had septic plans in with the Board of Health for 40 plus days, and we'd be very grateful if we could get some comments well in advance of our next hearing, so that we, have something to respond to. And
we have another hearing on the books. I see. I know we have one on the 26th, but is that for this?
No, that's for Washington Street. I presume you'll want to put another hearing for Brush Hill on the calendar tonight. But what I was saying is that I would be grateful if we could get some comments from the Board of Health in advance of that next meeting, just so we can move the conversation
Understood. Along. I think, unfortunately, at the moment, that's between you and the board. I will, if there's
any
except
it's relevant to your deliberations, Zach.
Completely. Yep. Understood. So, yes, the sooner the better would be helpful. I know Daryl's listening, so I'm sure she hears. Is there a particular topic, a new topic you would like to address at the next meeting?
I mean, I think we talked about going back to the conversation about traffic.
Fine, if you want to revisit that, so we can.
Well, it seems like folks want to revisit that. I mean, I'm happy.
It seems to be that definitely seems to be a point of contention. So that would be great. So why don't we plan on talking about traffic, and then if there's anything else, I know Rick has his hand up, so if we could sort of get his input here.
Well, the other thing I would say, Zach, is to the extent we can, we have comments from Tetra Tech, we can begin to address those with you, obviously. So that's
so we will start with traffic, go to Tetra Tech if we have them, and then other matters. Rick?
We are well over the promised 30 seconds, and I think we owe it to Jonathan to set our next meeting date and adjourn.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you very much.
And bird stops. Yeah, perfect.
Jean, Bob, any requests for the next meeting date? I don't know what your availability is.
I mean, 3 weeks forward. I mean, I'd like to move things along, obviously.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. But Mr. Chairman, it looks like we're scheduled on the 22nd for a separate topic.
Another 40B.
Yes.
Well,
so 3 put us to the 27th, the Tuesday.
So Todd and Zach, what I would say about that is I think it's pretty likely I'm going to ask for a continuance of that without any meaningful conversation.
The 22nd.
Yeah, so perhaps we could add this.
Why don't we schedule this for the 22nd?
Exactly.
And then when the other one moves out of the way,
yes, exactly.
So Jeannie, we'll make sure that that's posted. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we continue this hearing till August 22nd at 7 PM and adjourn.
I
A
second.
Seconded. Can I take a vote by roll, please? Mr. Fitch,
Pitch, aye.
Mr. Labby,
Labby, I.
Mr. Novak.
Well, my vote doesn't matter, but aye.
Yes, it does. And Mr. McBride, aye. Wonderful. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We will see you again in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.